crazy, and it is. But they view themselves as like enforcing God's law out there. Like they kill gays, they kill interracial couples, all these kinds of things. Rob banks. It's complicated. Anyway, that's what anyway, so I just interviewed this guy when the bombing took place. So my mindset was actually when it happened, I thought of this. And then the next day I had a white supremacist source of me call me and tell me that, you know, his member had been interviewed by the FBI. I was like, well, that's interesting. And then I had this white supremacist expert that I know real well, Lenny Zeskin, and he was telling me about the similarities between the Oklahoma City bombing and the Turner Diaries. And Lenny, to his credit, is the first one that ever said that. And so I did a story. Well, the next morning, I got a phone call from this woman. I'll never forget this. She was literally screaming at me. I mean, screaming. I was like, I was holding the phone out like that, and everybody in the newsroom was watching, you know, while this woman's like screaming at me. And it's the only time in my career I've ever done this. Because normally I don't react. I mean, people want to yell, fine, just yell, you know. But I finally got tired of it. And so finally I screamed back. And I said to her, if you'll just shut up, I'll explain it to you. She was complaining that, you know, how could I say white supremacists were involved in this because there weren't that many black Americans living in Oklahoma City. I was like, if you'll just shut up, I'll explain it to you. And of course, the target of the white supremacists was the federal government, which they believe was Jewish control, this whole, again, crazy belief. But anyway, but you know, you go back to the Cold War days and you think about this. You know, Americans hated Russians, Russians hated Americans. But we really knew nothing about each other, right? We didn't know one thing. And we weren't going over there. They weren't coming over here. There weren't a whole lot of them hanging out in here in Jackson, right? You know? And many people thought that, but anyway, they claimed that, but they really weren't. But anyway, but I think we're witnessing some of that same stuff in U.S. relations with the Arab world. I really do. It's that same kind of mentality, you know, that you know, few Americans have visited or really understand and comprehend the Arab world, and there needs to be more done about that. And so you have a certain number of Americans out there that are kind of fanning the flames of this, and you see it over and over again. You see it in the press, you see it and so, you know, so what happens is when you fan those flames of hate, what happens in the little video talk a little bit about this is dehumanize. That's what happens. You dehumanize. They're no longer human. They're, as Sam King talks about in his book, they're monsters, right? They're insects. They're less than human. It's something less than human. And when they're less than human, what happens? People give themselves permission to destroy, right? Because they're not human, right? Or they're monsters, they deserve to die, right? So that's the mentality, and the press needs to play an important role in telling the truth about this. A little over a year ago, right here in Jackson, a group of white teenagers drove into town, beat up James C. Anderson, and ran over him with a truck and killed him, simply because of the color of his skin. Wow. You know, it's easier to blame, to scapegoat, to reinforce negative stereotypes, and to whip up public anger than it is to honestly examine and see the way others live and work and worship. That is why the press must play a greater role in telling the truth and ensuring that global understanding does take place. And the language that we use in our stories is key. And I'll give a quick example, I'll be done. I know y'all remember back to the Oklahoma City bombing. At that very moment when it happened, what did everybody do? Act of terrorism, right? Act of terrorism, you know, Middle Eastern terrorists, whatever. And so, but remember what happened? Like the second day, they released sketches of John Doe 1 and John Doe 2, right? What did they look like? White guys, right? You know, one of us. So what happened suddenly at that, the same commentators who were saying this is terrorism, what happened after the sketches got released? That description got dropped. Why don't we call what the Klan did terrorism? What are we afraid of? You know what I mean? I mean, what they did was terrorism. We don't like to call it that, but I mean, the Klan were terrorists long before Al-Qaeda ever came along, right? You know, let's be clear. When people bomb and kill and maim and injure, such as 9/11, they deserve to be called terrorists. And we in the press need to use the same language when Americans carry out the same exact acts, don't you think? The truth is hard work. And I know this is a reporter, it's not easy, it is hard work. But it's tougher and deeper and harder to ferret out rather than relying on negative stereotypes. But when we take the time to discover how real people live their lives, no matter how far away, we will find we are far more alike than we are different. Just as capable as us of love, even loving our enemies. May God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jerry Mitchell. You make me proud to be a journalist, although yesterday it was pretty hard. I had to sit and the speaker was criticizing the media, and he said if the Lord came back and walked on water, the headline the next day would be, Jesus can't swim. Pretty hard to take. Right now, we're going to move ahead with our award recipients for the evening. The 2012 Institute of Interfaith Dialogue Awards. We publicly recognize outstanding achievements of those who have distinguished themselves in their professions and services to society by generously contributing their time, energy, expertise, and financial resources. The awards are based on a variety of themes, including community and professional leadership, community service, educational involvement, and media service. And I want to apologize, we're probably going to have to shift a little bit. I have to get back to do the 10 o'clock news tonight. Yeah, and we're in ratings, so if I don't show up, it would not be good. And I want to make sure that I can come back tomorrow. So what I'm going to do, if you will work with me, is introduce the first award, and I may have to slip out. And before I do, there are two people, we recognize them some, but I'd like to ask them to stand up. Beginning with James Meredith. We recognize you, so just stand up and let everybody love on you. I see his wife Judy with him as well. Hello, Judy. Thank you for being here. And I would like for her to stand where everyone can see her. We all stood up, so and when she stood up, we couldn't see her. And that is the wonderful, the dynamic, and someone who has supported me and encouraged me, and I've loved even a lot of times from a distance, and that is the wonderful Merle Evers. Wow, the IID knows how to do this. I love it. I love it. Well, at this time, I'd like to bring forward Reverend Stan Wilson, and he will introduce the first award recipient, and it is the Community Service Award.